After playing with the Ouija board, a group of friends awaken the spirit of a demonic clown who begins to hunt them down, forcing them to put the pieces of the puzzle together before they are all eliminated. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, THRU, from 2007. Looking for a place to eat, a couple of criminals take their girlfriends to Hell Burger, the drive-thru of the infernal clown. Totally out of his mind, the driver starts making fun of the supposed attendant, who responds by calling him insane. Angrily, the guy in the back seat grabs his pistol and says he's going to the attendant to show him who's boss. After breaking down the dinner door, the delinquent goes to the establishment's microphone and starts calling for the clown. Suddenly, the man hears a noise in the kitchen and decides to go there to investigate, but despite his fright, he finds nothing but a rat. Still looking for the attendant, the criminal comes out of the pantry and ends up being surprised by the infernal clown who throws him away, with no chance of defending himself. Not knowing what had happened to his friend, the other gang member went into the diner looking for his partner and found him with his head in the potato fryer. Desperate, the man pulls his friend's face out of the hot oil and is horrified when his skin comes off in his hands. While the criminal is still in shock, the clown appears behind him and throws him onto the bench, finishing him off with a cleaver blow. On the other side of town, some high school students are throwing a party to celebrate the end of their last year at school. Because of the noise, the neighbors call the police and young Mackenzie receives a summons, worrying about her parents' reaction when they find out she's thrown a party. While the girl is thinking about what to do, one of her friends finds a Ouija board and they all decide to use it to talk to the spirits. It is then that some of the people have the idea of challenging the spirits while smoking. Not taking things too seriously, Mackenzie asks the souls to manifest and her friends start making fun. As nothing happens, they decide to stop playing and their friends go away, leaving Mackenzie alone with her boyfriend Fisher when the pointer on the board starts to move on its own. Even though she is frightened, the girl writes down the spirit's message on her palm and realizes that he has passed on a certain code, but she doesn't understand what it means. In the parking lot of Inferno Burger, is visible that the code is actually the license plate of the two thugs' car, where their girlfriends have fallen asleep waiting for them. Suddenly, one of the girls wakes up to find their bodies in the trunk, and she becomes desperate. As she screams in terror, the clown appears behind her friend and breaks the glass with a knife, driving the blade into the young woman's skull. The next morning, detectives Dwayne and Brenda show up to investigate and can't find any sign of who did it, leaving them puzzled by the crime. Still unaware of what happened, Mackenzie's parents find out about the party and fight with her for losing her camera. After the argument, a news program starts on TV to tell about the crime at the Inferno Burger and shows the license plate of the car, leaving Mackenzie in shock as she remembers the message on the Ouija board. Confused, the girl gets together with her friends to think about what to do, and after a bit of discussion, they all agree not to talk about it and try to lead their lives as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Fisher and Mackenzie meet in the school hallway and start playing with a toy crystal ball. After her boyfriend leaves, Mackenzie decides to ask the toy one last question and is answered by the spirit of the Ouija who starts talking to her. Frightened, the girl asks why he is doing this and the ghost replies with the message, a broken heart. Unsure of what to do, Mackenzie calls her friend Val, who has coincidentally just had a broken heart tattooed on her waist. Since Mackenzie doesn't say anything about contact with spirits, Val just tells her that she's got a new tattoo and wants her to see it, saying that she'll call her later to arrange to meet up. After the girls hang up, the infernal clown passes by in the corridor and Val goes after him to ask who he is, being captured by the spirit with no chance of defending herself. After the call, Mackenzie goes to the computer room to do some work when a totally crazy janitor shows up. Despite being frightening, the man only talks a little about his work and gives the camera back to the girl, refusing to answer where he found it. Happy to have recovered the object, Mackenzie goes to the school's darkroom to develop some photos and finds the image of the bodies from the previous day on the memory card. While trying to figure out how it got on her camera, the girl realizes that she is being watched by the demonic clown and tries to run away, but ends up being cornered by the creature. Mackenzie tries to defend herself with a chair and is disarmed by the clown who starts pulling her by the leg. The girl then kicks the bizarre clown right in the lower parts, giving her a way out of the room and down the corridor. For some reason, the clown stops chasing her for no reason and lets her into a room. On the spot, Mackenzie finds Val with her head stuck inside a microwave. Even though she tries to help her friend, all Mackenzie can do is watch as Val is boiled until her eyes burst. As soon as the girl is eliminated, the clown enters the room and chases Mackenzie again, who runs for the locked exit. Not knowing what to do, the girl starts shouting at the clown who suddenly appears in the doorway behind her. Despite her fright, the girl manages to free herself and runs down the corridors until she sees the janitor's trolley at the entrance to the restroom. To get help, Mackenzie enters the place and finds the man hanging by the neck, causing the girl to go into shock and run outside, where she is finally found by a policeman. At the police station, Mackenzie explains that everything is the clown's fault and none of the detectives believe her, pointing to the janitor himself as the main suspect. Despite not believing the girl, the pair of investigators need to gather information and go to the home of Jack, the founder of the Burger Hell. On the spot, Brenda says that the criminal is wearing his restaurant costume and the man invites them both into his office. There, the detectives ask questions about the costume and ask to see the images from the security cameras from the day of the first crime, but for some reason the man lies, saying that they are just a cover and that none of them really work. Looking at the owner's desk, Dwayne sees a photo of the restaurant's first hellish clown and asks more about what happened, discovering that the job used to belong to Art, Jack's son who perished almost 20 years ago. As they can't get any useful information, the pair of policemen leave Jack alone, who starts re-watching the recordings as soon as they leave. At home, Mackenzie is spending time with Fisher when the magic slate under the bed starts writing itself, giving her a clue as to who the next victim will be. Later, the couple meet Tina, who is wearing a blouse with the same print as the magic slate, but as they haven't seen the clue, neither of them realize it and they start teasing the girl and her boyfriend. After a brief discussion, Tina and the young man get on the ghost train, which goes as expected. That is until the power goes out and the girl feels that something has wet her clothes. When the lights come back on, Tina realizes that her boyfriend has been beheaded, and ends up captured by the infernal clown, being turned into a mincemeat while Fisher watches everything from behind a fake mirror. Without imagining what is happening to her boyfriend, Mackenzie is eating with her parents when they meet Bert, Tina's father, who coincidentally went to school with Marcia, Mackenzie's mother. After some small talk, the man mentions what happened to Val and recalls that her mother went to high school with them. After the statement, the atmosphere becomes awkward and Bert decides to leave, leaving the family alone. Before they can talk about what happened, Star shows up and tells Mackenzie that the ghost train stopped working, and that Fisher disappeared at the same time. Worried, the two enter the attraction looking for the young man, finding the floor covered in blood. While they're trying to figure out what happened, Fisher turns up all bruised and in a state of shock, prompting the authorities to take him to hospital as a matter of urgency. Despite wanting to accompany him, Mackenzie is prevented by Brenda, who orders her to go home, making the girl find the magic blackboard with the clues she hadn't seen before. Without thinking twice, the young woman rushes to the hospital to talk to Fisher, but ends up being stopped by one of the policemen. Hearing her daughter's cries, Marcia appears to help and Brenda goes over to calm the situation. Alone with the investigator, Mackenzie asks why there are police in her boyfriend's room and Brenda replies that he is the only living witness. Mackenzie then talks about the clue on the magic blackboard and the detective asks her to stop, saying that if she puts that kind of information in the report she will automatically be fired. Worried about her daughter, Marcia goes after Mackenzie, who asks her to explain to the police why all the victims are the children of her old school friends. Although her mother tries to pretend she doesn't know anything, Mackenzie says the pattern is clear and Marcia says it's just a coincidence. While Brenda watches everything from the hallway, Mackenzie asks her mother to stop pretending and the woman asks her daughter to keep her voice down, saying she could be accused of hiding information. Outraged, Mackenzie says she has more important things to worry about and reminds her that she could be the next victim, which makes Marcia leave angrily. After hearing the conversation, Brenda goes to the police station where she hears Bert accusing Fisher of being responsible for the crimes. Now that she has realized the connection between the victims, the detective decides to ask questions about Bert's past and realizes that he really did know the parents of all the victims, confirming Mackenzie's assumption. Brenda then asks Bert to tell the truth and asks him why he wants to eliminate the children of his former colleagues, managing to convince the man to give his testimony. On the gurney, Fisher takes some of his sleeping pills and puts them in the burger, knocking over a glass to wake Dwayne. After the policeman gets up, the young man offers him the adulterated hamburger and the policeman doesn't think twice about accepting it, blacking out shortly afterwards. While waiting to hear from her boyfriend, Mackenzie goes to the candy machine to get a snack when a toy with a clown's head is spat out of the machine next to her. As she examines the object, the girl sees a piece of paper saying that he will meet her at 4:20 and runs to Dwayne to tell him what she has found, only to find the man already passed out. Determined to prevent further victims, Mackenzie rushes to her car where she finds Fisher in the back seat. Despite her fright, the girl manages to pull herself together and asks her boyfriend if he knows what that clue means. As soon as he sees the time of the message, Fisher calls a friend and asks about anyone connected to the 420 number. When he hears this, he automatically remembers a group of graffiti artists who call themselves the 420 Bros. When he hears that the group is led by Chuck, Mackenzie remembers that his father was her mother's boyfriend at school and asks Fisher to help her. In the game room of the Burger Hell, Chuck and his friends graffiti the wall of the establishment and smoke while the attendant serves another customer. Hungry, Carrie lets her friends have their fun and goes to the counter to place an order, but the attendant notices the young men in the children's area and goes over to try to kick them out. As the two refuse to leave, the man goes up to Carrie and asks her to take them away before he calls the police, but the girl simply ignores him and goes into the restroom while the attendant goes out to get the snack. Alone in the playground, the two young men talk to the clown statue, which begins to threaten them. Totally delirious, they don't realize what's going on and they don't see when the infernal clown gets up from the ball pool behind them. Completely insane, the crooked clown throws his cleaver through the skull of one of the young men. Not satisfied, the hooded beast goes up to Chuck and says he's going to turn him into a sandwich, taking his cleaver from the other man's head to attack the young man. When she returns from the bathroom, Carrie sees the trail of her friend's blood and goes into a state of shock, calling the journalists who are covering the crime. From her home, Mackenzie sees the news report when her mother shows up asking where she is. Frustrated, the girl says that it's her fault Chuck's father will live the rest of his life without his son and asks if she'll talk to the detective now. Scared, Marcia finally decides to tell her why someone is after her friends, revealing that when she was a teenager, she and her group used to go out together to enjoy their hipster phase. Unlike her and her friends, another young man called Art was more reclusive and spent his days working as a clown at Inferno Burger, his father's restaurant. As Art had no friends, Marcia and the others loved to torment the young man who was obsessed with her. The woman then says that Art was forced by his father to drop out of school to focus on being the infernal clown, until the day he perished in a fire. Although the police think it was accidental, Marcia reveals that they are wrong and tells them that her friends took Art's life. On his 18th birthday, the young man invited Marcia's group, who didn't show up for the celebration, leaving him alone with the cake in the cafeteria. As if that wasn't bad enough, Marcia convinced everyone to go to the place and make fun of Art just to make a fool of him. To do this, she went to the front of the cafeteria and made Art leave the table. Taking advantage of the gap, Chuck's father grabbed the clown mask and went behind the young man to give him a scare, causing Art to knock over the table with the cake and fall. Although the young man fainted from the impact, everyone left the cafeteria and didn't see when the candles from the cake set fire to the fabric on the table, except Marcia, who, although she saw it, decided to just leave for fear of the consequences. Because of this, Art perished and everyone decided to remain silent, taking advantage of the fact that the police thought it was an accident so that they could all get away with it. Now that she knows the story, Mackenzie gathers her friends and decides to go after Jack to get help. Since Art is still around, Mackenzie takes her father's revolver and goes to talk to Jack while her friends investigate the garage. At the police station, Brenda finishes listening to Bert and tries to get a search warrant against Jack, thinking that he is to blame for the current crimes. Despite not getting the judge's authorization, the investigator receives a call from Marcia who tells her about her daughter's plans, giving her the alibi she needed to go to Jack's house. At the place, Mackenzie and Fisher enter through the back door and start looking for the owner of the Burger Hell, finding Art's old room completely intact. While investigating the place, the two find a toy of the infernal clown who wishes Mackenzie a happy birthday at exactly midnight, making the girl realize that Art is planning to take her life on a commemorative date just like his elimination. Suddenly, the power goes off in the house and the couple decide to leave the room. Meanwhile, Van searches the garage and finds a freezer with a body inside. Frightened, the young man calls Star over and removes the plastic from the body, discovering that it is Star herself who is frozen inside. With the young man still in shock, the clown emerges from the ceiling and slashes the young man with his cleaver, splitting his body in two. Upstairs, Fisher and Mackenzie are preparing to enter a room when the clown shoves his cleaver through the door, causing the girl to drop her revolver and run out in desperation. While the two are being followed by the monster, Brenda and Dwayne arrive at the house and also split up, with the detective going to the garage while the investigator goes up to the second floor. Upstairs, Mackenzie is attacked by the clown and ends up fainting, forcing Fisher to defend her. While fighting with Art, the young man accidentally removes his mask and sees the creature's face, falling for a stunt similar to the ghost biker's look of penance. In the garage, Dwayne approaches to investigate and sees the trail of blood that leads to the freezer, finding the bodies of Van and Star. The investigator immediately gets on the radio and reports the find to Brenda, who orders him to call for reinforcements and go to her. Just above, the detective meets Jack, who begs for help, saying that Art will eliminate him, but the woman still thinks he is the criminal and decides to arrest him. In another room, Mackenzie wakes up tied to a chair with all her lifeless friends by her side. In revenge for what they did to him, Art takes a gallon of gasoline and pours it all over the girl's head, leaving her completely soaked. With everything ready, Art picks up a candle to light it on fire, when Marcia appears, firing a shot that leaves the creature dizzy. Thinking she had beaten him, Marcia tries to untie her daughter and ends up being surprised by Art, who attacks her from behind, squeezing her neck until she blacks out. Meanwhile, Mackenzie unties herself and turns over a canteen of alcohol, pouring it into her mouth and pretending to be passed out. When Art approaches with the candle, the girl raises her head and spits all the alcohol in the clown's face. With the same fate as before, Art burns to the ground while Marcia watches on beside her daughter. Now that things are calmer, Brenda apologizes for not having believed the girl and tells her that Fisher is still alive, despite having been terribly injured. Happy, the girl goes to the hospital where she realizes that her boyfriend has disappeared. Seeing the scene, Mackenzie immediately realizes that Fisher has escaped and has been possessed by Art's spirit, becoming the new infernal clown. In the burger hell, Dwayne arrives to place an order and is mocked by the attendant as well as the other two delinquents. While the policeman is trying to place the order, the infernal clown passes in front of him and jumps on the windshield of the car, striking a cleaver blow that takes the policeman's life.